Okay, hi. So yesterday I was chatting on Skype with a friend from New York, and you know, I know there's a lot of differences in every country has their own language, and even like English speaking languages have their own takes on particular words and phrases. But it wasn't until my friend and I were discussing them and, you know, comparing different words and stuff that I realized just how many there are. You go to the grocery store, we go to the supermarket. You walk down the sidewalk, we walk down the footpath. You park in the parking lot, we park in a car park. You wear a sweater, we call it a jumper. You call it a soda, we call it soft drink. Which I think originated from like, you know, liquor being a hard drink and then your mixers being soft. I guess that's where that came from. But we don't really call it soda. Oh, and what you call a cookie, we call a biscuit. And that's even more confusing because what you call a biscuit is what we call a scone, except we don't pronounce it scone, we pronounce it scone, S-C. We actually spell it the same, S-C-O-N-E, but it sounds like S-C-O-N, scone. Tracky dacks are tracksuit pants. A bludger is a lazy person. To be stoked is to be really happy or pleased. A snag is a sausage, which you might throw on the Barbie. To come Augusta is to have an accident or make a mistake. And another one for accident is like car accident, you could call that a prang. A pash is like making out. I guess it's like passionate kiss. Want a pash? You might want a pash with a Sheila. A Sheila is a woman. I wanted to go way back to the start of the video. I actually wanted to start with "G'day mate" because that's the biggest one that people think we say. Sometimes people say "G'day," but it's not really like current. I think people used to say that in the olden days, and it's more like country people. Only thing I can liken it to would be like howdy. Like people in America don't all say howdy to each other, but I suppose older people or country bumpkin people maybe. So that's kind of like what "g'day" is, and you're never going to meet someone that's going to say "g'day mate." But these stereotypes stick, like throw a shrimp on the Barbie. Come to Australia. Come on, get here right now, and you try and find me one person that is ever going to say throw a shrimp on a Barbie. Now I've done a little research and figured out how this whole thing started, because actually before we even get into that, let me tell you, we don't even call them shrimp. We call them prawns. But the reason, the way this whole thing started was way back in the 80s, Paul Hogan, aka the Crocodile Dundee, did like a tourism commercial ad for the American TV audience. You know, trying to get them to come to Australia for a vacation, right? And as the tagline of this thing, I guess the writers came up with this throw a shrimp on the Barbie. Barbie, of course, being short for barbecue. Now, I suppose you will find Australians that will say Barbie in place of barbecue because we do that with a lot of words. Actually, speaking of, I'm digressing, but today, Australia Day, McDonald's have officially changed their name in Australia to Macca's, including signs. They've changed all the signs and all the menus and everything, it's all Macca's. Just for this week only to celebrate Australia Day, and that all came about because even though we know it's called McDonald's officially, nobody actually calls it McDonald's here, we just call it Macca's. A bottle O is a liquor store where you might buy a stubby, which is a bottle of beer, or a tinny, which is a can of beer. In Australia, we call these chips and these chips. Now, I get that in England they call these crisps. Yet they still call these chips, but in America you call those fries. Okay, my brain's starting to hurt already. And what about what you put on them? Ketchup, okay? Well, we call that tomato sauce. Well, we used to call it tomato sauce. This one's confusing. When I was growing up, we didn't have ketchup. But now, when you go to the supermarket, or grocery store as you might call it, we can buy tomato sauce or ketchup, which I still think is the same thing, so it's starting to get confusing. Oh, and then there's your shopping cart, which we call a trolley. Oh, there are so many. Okay, I've seen kangaroos in two places, like in two settings in my entire life. The zoo and a roadkill on the side of the road. When a truck hits a kangaroo, it is not pretty, but if a regular car hits a kangaroo, yeah, it's not so good for the car. About 10 years ago, some friends and I were doing an interstate trip. We were going, I can't remember where, and
in the middle of the night, middle of nowhere, no cars around, nothing. We hit a kangaroo and it wrote off the car. The car was destroyed. Now, of course, the kangaroo didn't survive either, but that's how big and scary these kangaroos are. They're not cute little things that you can, you know, have a hug with. And so I think because of that, I don't have an affectionate feeling about kangaroos. Today, I'm actually going to be cooking kangaroo burgers, which, you know, if you're really clever, you can actually buy a kangaroo like ground meat and you can make your own burger patties and do that whole thing. But I'm lazy, so you can actually buy them already done. And that's the way I'm going to do it. But you can also buy kangaroo meat, sausages, kebabs or whatever you call them, where it's the meat on a stick and then you grill it. Or you can do the ground meat thing and make meatballs. I've made spaghetti and meatballs with kangaroo before. Or you can buy like kangaroo steaks. Kangaroo steaks are just amazing. You can buy it in every supermarket and it's cheap. It's much cheaper than beef and it's totally lean. There's barely any fat on it and it tastes really good. When it comes to cars, you pop the hood. We don't call it a hood, we call it a bonnet. And we don't pop the trunk at the back, we call it a boot. No idea why. And there's one other little stereotype about Australia that I feel I really should clarify. Hot Aussie man. There seems to be this thing. I don't know if it's just with like Americans or with people all over the world, but there's this whole thing about
Aussie men are so hot. Out of this world buff, surfer guy hot.
Australia is like one of the fattest nations in the world. I think we're second only to the USA. The point I'm trying to make is, unfortunately, yeah, the Aussie men are not really the smorgasbord of delicious that you might expect.
And with a baby, you know, you put the diaper on a baby. Yeah, we don't call them diapers here. We call them nappies. And what do you put in a baby's mouth? A pacifier, right? We actually call it a dummy.
And I've noticed that a lot of the Aussie slang references animals. Somebody who's mad as a cut snake is very angry. Now, I don't get this one at all, but to be grinning like a shot fox is apparently somebody who's really like smugly smiling or grinning. It's a pretty horrible image to think about. To be flat out like a lizard drinking is to be really busy. A rat bag. Now, I remember my mum calling me a rat bag when I was a kid. I think it means kids that are like out of control or misbehaving children. And somebody who has a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock is somebody who's mentally challenged. You also might say that person is off their rocker.
Nah, mate, he's just got a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock.
If something is shonky, it's of poor quality or counterfeit. But if something's real and genuine, it's true blue. Or fair dinkum.
But it's fun, I like the differences and stuff. But what I think's funny is, like, you know, in Australia, our media is all American, really. Like, we get a lot of American TV and all the movies are here and like the music and everything. So we fully understand the American English language. You know, what I was talking about before, you talk about cookies and diapers and pacifiers and, you know, all that stuff, and we know exactly what you're talking about. Yet I think if we like went over to like New York and just started talking our regular Australian English language, talking about dummies in a baby, wearing a nappy, after you know, put all the junk in the boot of the car, you'd be like looking at us like, what planet are you from?
No wonder tourists have such a hard time when they come here. It's even confusing for us locals. Have a great weekend. Okay, bye.
Ooh, it's so thick and salty.